The Autoblog Podcast is presented by the Salvation Army. Your donations help those in need win their daily battles to survive poverty. To give, ask your smart speaker to make a donation to the Salvation Army, or make your gift at salvationarmyusa.org.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. Joining me today in the studio, Senior Editor John Snyder.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. It's Wednesday. It is very gray. It looks more like the first week of February here in Michigan. But so it goes. On the phones from mid-Ohio, I guess, not the racetrack, but literally geographically, is Jeremy Korzeniewski, our consumer editor. How's the weather down there, JK?
Also gray, also snowy, and also mid-February-ish.
Yeah. We've literally slipped right into that like kind of late winter depression. And I like winter. I really do, but was hoping for another week of fall.
Yeah, it's just not time for winter yet.
Yeah. I mean, so it goes. But you know what really warmed me up was a Bentley Continental GT we had this week. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fun. And we're also going to talk about the Toyota 4Runner, which I always like driving those. They're a lot of fun. This one was the TRD Off-Road one. Loaded up, pretty cool. So we'll talk about those. Then we're going to get into a segment that you might remember, longtime readers of the site might remember, This or That. It's sort of where we debate a subject, like both sides of it. We're going to basically do things like take positions and have some fun with that. A couple of the subjects, just to tease it out, we'll debate if you'd get the Jeep Gladiator or the Jeep Wrangler, and a couple other interesting topics. Then lastly, we will spend your money. And we do have an update on an episode 590. We have an update on what Jeff ended up buying. Hint, it may play into another theme we've already mentioned. So we'll see. All right, let's jump right in, though, with the Bentley. This thing was not cheap, as you would expect. Beautiful car, subtle, understated a little bit. Interior had purple lighting, which I thought was cool. Mm-hmm. Very nice vehicle, powerful. This is the Continental GT with the V8 engine, which I think is plenty of motor, actually.
It really is. You know, I was looking at the specs, and it has, it's a 4-liter V8, twin turbocharged. It's got 542 horsepower, 568 pound-feet of torque. It's just shy of the amount of horsepower that the original Conti GT 2004 12-cylinder had. Just a few horsepower shy, and it out-torques it by quite a bit. And it still does 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Definitely plenty of motor there. This one's also the first edition. So in it with the GT V8 starting at about it says 198.5 on this.
It's a bargain.
Yeah, the total price on ours is $280,000.
So you're saying we maybe ticked a few options? Is that what we did there?
Yeah, so it's got the centenary specification, so it's got a bunch of badges.
Pretty cool, British flags, things like that.
Yeah, and on the badge on the front says 1919 to 2019. It's got the first edition treatment, so it's got some cool badges there, and 22-inch black wheels and things like that. B&O sound system. But yeah, it's pretty cool. That color, it's called Damson, but it's like
it's a cool name for a color.
It's like a plum, like a dark plum, almost mahogany sort of wine color.
Yeah, like a really deep red.
Yeah.
Like you'd have one glass of it and not need a second one.
And it looks pretty good. The exterior is kind of subtly purple, but inside it's like a boudoir thing going on. That deep purple with lots of quilting and just leather everywhere.
The inside, the main hide, which is what, normally you would call just interior finishings. It's also damson.
Yeah.
And the secondary hide is beluga.
Beluga. Yeah, so like the headliner, I think is that beluga. It's like a darker black. But yeah, fun car to drive. I was going to take it home the other day during that snowstorm, opted out of that, and took the 4Runner instead, which we'll get to. But I drove this last night, super comfortable on the highway. Compliant suspension. There's a little bit of road noise. I think the big wheels and smaller rubber have a little bit to do with that. But
those are 22 inches, 5-spoke
they're
alloys.
Huge. And the brakes
monsters.
inside there are just enormous. The biggest discs I've ever seen, and huge calipers too. But yeah, it's compliant. It's comfortable, super comfortable, and yet it still feels pretty spry. It's definitely quick, and it handles pretty well for a car that weighs 5,000 pounds.
I was a little surprised actually that the visibility, at least the forward visibility, was decent. I mean, not like Subaru Forester good, but like okay. Sometimes you get in cars like that and you're in like a submarine.
Yeah, the hood's pretty high on that, but other than that, it's not too bad. There's not a lot of body in the way. There's that high hood and that big leather dash that sort of, you can't see directly in front of you, but you can sort of see your corners pretty well and got a good sense of making sure you're not going to hit that car in the parking lot.
Did you flip the infotainm's? Did you do that at all?
Yeah.
That's a cool feature,
crazy.
Right?
Yeah, so when you turn it off, it just looks like the rest of the dash. It's ours is like a black veneer with like a little Brightwork stripe down it that goes all the way around the entire interior. And then when you turn it on, it flips to the infotainment screen, and then there's another button you can press that makes it flip one more time to, there's a compass, a stopwatch, and some other analog dial, but it looks really cool.
If you want to see a video of it, I just tweeted that out this morning. Check my Twitter handle. That's at Greg Migliore, shameless self-promotion. What's your Twitter handle, John?
It's Beltz Snyder.
All right. Yeah. There we go. So if you're interested in following along with us, Jeremy, what is your Twitter handle while we're doing some self-promotion?
At JCors.
All righty. So there you go. If you're curious, you have feedback from this podcast, or hey, you want to see that Bentley video, do check it out. But anyways, to get back to the Bentley, I actually really like the exterior styling of this latest generation of the Continental. I think obviously it looks like you would expect, but I think they've done a good job of keeping it very proportional, very demonstrative. I like the black wheels. I think that's cool too. I think if you have a car this expensive, it's good to have subtle pieces. I really liked it. Walking the dog, I'd be coming around the corner of my neighborhood and it didn't pop out at you like, oh, wow, that guy's got a Bentley in his driveway.
Right.
It's just like, okay, it's a nice car. Wait, what's that?
For a $280,000 car, it's relatively understated, especially in that dark color. Coming into the garage on Monday morning and seeing it from across the way, it kind of, the haunches, it kind of looks like a Mustang in profile. Nothing too, flashy or crazy. But as you get closer, you start picking out these details. It's got that, sort of iconic diamond mesh grille.
I love that grill.
Yeah.
I think that grill is just spectacular.
The lights are, pretty signature. And then there's just really cool details, little badges here and there, little touches, little patterns inside the housing of the lights, and really, really cool attention to detail. And then you get inside of it, and it's just amazing. That's where I think this car really, really shines. It's just that interior craftsmanship. I think more so than its power, than its price tag, than anything on the exterior or under the hood. I think it's that interior that really sets this car apart.
I'm really impressed with the little details, like you said, on this car. So many things that really make it feel special, make it feel expensive, decadent without being over the top decadent. just really a very nice car. It's the kind of thing that I think, if I were in this segment, I would look for a car like this because it's very drivable. I didn't feel very intimidated driving it. A couple years ago, I was actually doing a video shoot out in California, and we had a Lambo. I think we had an Aventador. We had a McLaren. I forget which one, but it was a McLaren. And then I needed a car to drive back to and from the track. And the Bentley was part of another shoot, if you will. It was a Conti GTC, actually. It was a V8.
Nice.
And at first I was thinking, oh, man, do I want to tool around LA in a Bentley? But super comfortable. It was like basically my base of operations for the shoot.
Yeah.
And again, the same vibe with this. Drove it around this weekend, took it to Kroger where I did the drive up and they deliver your groceries out to you, which I believe is delivery fee free until the new year. That's not a product placement. That's just, I found that out. Love the look when the guy is like, where do you want your groceries, sir, in your Bentley? That's kind of fun. Otherwise, I didn't get a ton of stares or people really being blown away by it. I think the, again, the color is pretty subtle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's been very dark and gray.
Yeah.
So the car is a little bit of a Q-ship. But that's about what I did with it. Ran some errands. I ended up driving into the office on Sunday night and swapping out for a different car just for a variety of child care transport reasons. And I actually enjoyed that because I thoroughly, got to, soak in the car on a Sunday night before the weather turned here, have some fun with it. And then it was waiting for you 48 hours later when you decided to drive it. And for the record, that was totally the right decision to wait out the storm.
Yeah.
Even though this thing's totally capable. There is, I think, a little bit of it would weigh on your mind to be driving a car that costs as much as actually a pretty nice house.
Yeah.
And, you skid off the road and scrape a guardrail. Hey, who cares? You do that in whatever car.
Yeah.
But
in the first snow, it's other people you have to worry about too. Everyone just drives like an idiot the first time it snows. They don't, pay enough attention as they should, or they drive either too fast or way too slow. But anyway, this thing, once the snow is gone, very good, really nice Grand Touring vehicle. It really does the GT thing very well. Comfortable inside, spacious. The trunk is actually pretty big. I was looking back there. I could probably fit two of me back there pretty comfortable if I wanted to stuff myself inside there. But, big enough definitely for enough luggage for a long weekend. This would be a great car to, drive up north and take to, Traverse City and, bring your golf clubs and be comfortable on the highway. You get there fast. It just does all those things really, really well. It's not, it's not the most raucous, athletic, boisterous car out there for that price, but it does, that Grand Touring thing just super well.
A little bit of a lost art these days too. I really enjoy a good Grand Touring car. I think that in some ways is really my thing. I like big cars like that have strong motors, but also could be a little bit comfortable. Again, it's a lost art, like the Mercedes SL, those are very good, I think if I were a rock star or a professional athlete and I wanted a car that was we're not just talking a very nice Mercedes or BMW. You're talking celebrity, level car. I would look at this because it's this is way more comfortable and easy to drive than an Huracan or something, just because you have the money to afford a Lambo like that doesn't mean you're going to enjoy driving it. Right. I really enjoyed driving this. I also enjoyed driving the Huracan, for the record. But on a daily basis, no, I don't want to take a Lambo to Kroger.
Right.
So,
if you don't have to put anyone in the back seat of this, it's actually really practical.
Totally.
Like I think go ahead, Jeremy.
I think there's something to be said too for the not quite so ostentatious side of it too.
Yes.
A Bentley can fly under the radar in ways that something like a Rolls-Royce doesn't. I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast before, but one time I had a Rolls-Royce vehicle that I was testing, and I had to get from one place to another, and the way to get there, you had to get on a ferry. So I was on the ferry, the rocking of the boat sets the alarm off. And so over the entire loudspeaker on this ferry, some guy comes on and says, "Whoever's rolling in the rolls, your alarm's going off, you may want to go take care of that." And I felt like super awkward getting up and being like, "Oh yeah, sorry guys, that's me." It kind of puts you in a weird position, and I feel like something like the Bentley Continental GT, people recognize that it's a special car and something really great, but you're not going to get those moments where you're kind of like red-faced and almost embarrassed by it a little bit. Like, I'm not that ostentatious of a person. So, I feel like the Bentley kind of fits me a little bit more.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I agree 100%. It takes, you get people, I did get someone, sort of circling the car in the parking lot, checking it out, but it was someone who was driving an Audi TT. So he already, has a taste for good cars. But, other than that, I didn't really have anyone, ogling it or ask me about it. And I liked that.
Yeah, sometimes it is fun to fly below the radar. Like, there's certain cars you pull up in and, like, it's just like, like that, like a plum crazy Challenger or anything that's just so over the top. It's like, people are going to be like, "So what's up with that?" And it's like,
I hate having to explain myself at the gas station.
Such a first world problem. But I will say it's, that could be fun, but it's also it is fun to fly below the radar. I think, cool. I think that's awesome story, by the way, Jeremy. That is like only an auto journalist thing. You're on a ferry and the alarm goes off in your roller. I mean,
and you're embarrassed about it.
Yeah, good times. You had to get around in ferries a lot in the Pacific Northwest and the Seattle area. There's so many big bodies of water to get to drive around. So instead of bridges, they just load them on ferries. But yeah, most people don't have those kinds of problems to worry about, right?
I took a ferry in, I think, Norway a couple years ago. And I really like getting on board those things. Like, it's relaxing. It's usually not a long trip. It's enough to like maybe have a beer or something. We
could have a whole podcast segment about how cool car ferries are.
Okay, I have one other ferry story. I was on the Jaguar F-Pace launch maybe 3-4 years ago, and they launched it in Montenegro, which Montenegro is amazing. If you ever get a chance to go, it's really cool. It's not the kind of place that I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, top of my list. I want to go to Montenegro." But if you get a chance, go. Weirdest ferry experience of my life. You could fit like 3-4 cars on this like floating barge of a platform. It was completely unpowered. There was like a huge chain or like massive rope that went across, and there were like 3-4 guys standing on the ferry that went hand over hand over hand, pulling the barge of cars, like 3-4 at a time across this body of water. And it was like one of those moments where, I thought, I have got to get this on video because this is something you're never, ever going to see anywhere else.
That's awesome, man. I can't even picture that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Those guys must have some serious arm muscles.
You'd think, like, after a little while on that job, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should probably transition over to the 4Runner. John and I have spent the last couple nights driving one here in the office. Jeremy, though, I know you've been in and out of these recently and just also for years. Real quickly, what is your immediate take on the 4Runner? Like it, don't like it? I mean, sum it up.
No, I think the 4Runner's great. There's not that many vehicles out there right now that are so true to just what they are. They're not trying to be something that they're not. And I think that's totally the 4Runner. It is unapologetically a body-on-frame sport utility vehicle. It's not a crossover. It's not trying to be one. It doesn't ride smooth. It's rough and tumble. It is what it is, and I think it's super appealing for that reason.
Yeah, it was appealing to me when the snow was coming down and there was about a foot of it. Yeah, I drove it home through the snow. Very easy to drive through the snow. Just pop the little lever into 4-wheel drive. It's not, all the time. You got to do it yourself.
I did it all the time.
Yeah.
Even this morning, I'm like, nope, 4-wheel drive.
And but yeah, I was super confident driving the snow with that thing. It is, rough and tumble. The suspension, there's a lot going on there. It travels quite a bit. My wife would probably instantly get car sick in it. But I don't know. I think that kind of thing is cool. I would definitely love to actually drive this off road.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I just think it's not the kind of vehicle that everyone is going to like. It's not the kind of vehicle that we'd recommend to just anyone. Oh, you're shopping for a midsize SUV. Check out the 4Runner. There's a lot more comfortable options out there. The Kia Telluride comes to mind. Is a really great 3-row crossover. It's going to be a lot more comfortable in everyday driving and a heck of a lot more fuel efficient too. But if you're looking for that like traditional SUV experience, the 4Runner is great.
Yeah, I feel like Toyota and Lexus to that end do that pretty well. I mean, their actual body on frame SUVs feel very true to the spirit of SUVs. We were talking about with McGraw a couple episodes ago about the Toyotas and Lexus, sort of Land Cruiser style vehicles, and the 4Runner is the same thing. It's just it's a classic. It's a modern classic. I would say in terms of its personality.
It's definitely a vehicle I could drive every day. I think I would, if I were looking to like get a daily driver, I would probably look at a, lightly used one, let somebody else try to take the depreciation hit. Yeah. And, everything else on there has not changed. I mean, that's not a modern infotainment system. The rest of the gauges and the dials, it's all the same as it's been largely, for, recent memory, if you will. I really like the exterior styling. To me, it just really hits all the chords. It's fun to drive, I mean, I like that bouncy suspension. We had an optional suspension on there that I think was about $1,800. That's okay.
And I'll say something about that. I've driven 4Runners before, and there's a lot of squat and dive. It's like riding a seesaw, and this one wasn't quite so bad.
It might be the suspension, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought this one was definitely better. We should mention the price on this one, or else I'll get yelled at. Total on this one was $46,942, and that is with the kinetic dynamic suspension system is $1,750 on this.
Honestly, I would, if that's having sort of the effect that we think it is, because like I remember the 4Runner we had a while ago, it was bouncing all over the place in that thing. So I'm assuming the suspension is kind of smoothing things out. I think that's worth it, especially if you're going to own this car for a while.
If you're driving this in traffic at all, yes, absolutely.
Totally. If you have to brake the car under any sort of like time constraints, yeah, definitely. And it's actually, I think it's a pretty good riding, SUV.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely
for what it is. Let me qualify.
It's bouncy,
that.
But it's not like that squishy sort of bouncy. It's more that like truck-like sort of bouncy, which I can deal with.
I love the road view. It's a pretty, jacked up SUV with those big tires on it. You sort of, you see over a lot of things. Maybe not the dude in the, Ram 2500 or something, but you're flying above a lot of people, and that's cool. Yeah, I mean, my son liked it. Put him in the back, car seat fit nice and easy. If it wasn't 9 degrees, I would have vented that like window that like rolls down in the back, which is cool. Cabin's good. It's very usable. Everything's laid out. Like you were saying, John, the 4-wheel drive like lever, just boom right there. So that's good. I kind of like that more than the knob actually, which I think is on other 4Runners. This is very just basic. You want 4-wheel drive, you got to pull this lever.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
One note on the 4Runner. if someone's shopping for a brand new 4Runner and they're getting in that upper $40,000-$50,000 range, don't forget to take a look at certified pre-owned Lexus GX models also. Right. It's a very similar platform. With the GX, you get a full-time four-wheel drive system and the 4.6-liter V8, which is, it's a little bit more powerful and a little bit more refined than the six-cylinder that you get in the 4Runner at that price range. You end up with maybe a little bit nicer of a car, maybe a little bit quieter, maybe even a little bit less fuel efficient. But definitely something to cross shop.
Agreed. Yeah, that V8 is nice. We had one of those in a while back, and yeah, it's plenty potent. It's actually pretty fun to drive around.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I think I would, if I were looking for a daily drive or something that could have some space, some capability, and I wanted that wanted the SUV feel, I would look at a 4Runner. I would look at a GX, lightly used GX maybe, you said, Jeremy. Yeah. I mean, frankly, I think it was you earlier, John, you were mentioning just how well Toyota's traditional SUV ethos are really sort of carrying through. And I think that's an awesome thing. I think there's so many commodity crossovers out there that have no character. They're bland. They're boring to drive. They don't have guts, or they look weird, even some of the other Lexus SUVs. I think it's great that if you want an old school SUV that's still a modern, reliable, safe vehicle, that Toyota is more than willing to accommodate you.
Yeah, this feels like something from the mid '90s in a good way.
Yeah,
I mean it hasn't changed a lot. It's kept the good things and improved somewhat on some of the other things. There's some things that could use some updating, especially like the technology. The one thing I found with this, the infotainment with any sun in the shining in there, I could not see the infotainment screen to save my life.
A modern infotainment screen would really help this thing out. Yeah. I think it's really interesting when you drive different vehicles sort of post refresh, and then you're like, oh wow, that really made a difference. They just put a new infotainment system, changed the wheels, and did 2 or 3 other things, and it's just oh, that made all the difference. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there are some tweaks they can make here to the 4Runner that would help it out a little bit. That being said, I think whoever really wants a 4Runner is just going to buy one anyway.
Right.
So, cool. So 4Runner, I think, is a good transition to talk about the Jeep Wrangler, and also launch a segment that we're going to call This or That. Longtime readers of the site will remember that we used to do a written This or That post. It was kind of fun. We'd argue, we'd debate, we'd talk about different approaches to things, and we're going to try it out on the podcast. Who knows? Maybe we'll throw some of these into posts or something too. First subject though, This or That, the Jeep Gladiator or the Jeep Wrangler. 2 fairly similar vehicles. I think it's fair to say if you're going to look at one, you'd probably look at the other. Jeremy, I know I've said this a million times, but with the initials JK, I will throw this Jeep subject over to you. This or That, Gladiator or Wrangler?
All right. So first, my pick. I'm going Gladiator, and here's why. 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm getting my fun off-road, take the top off, take the doors off, not putting the windshield down, leave that to other people, but take the top off, take the doors off, open air, fun experience vehicle. That translates really well from Wrangler over to Gladiator. And I'm getting a pickup truck, which is super useful. And the tow rating is better, which I do tow things from here, from time to time. So yeah, it's probably the way that I'm going. I will counter my own opinion by saying that the Wrangler looks better than the Gladiator. It's more classic. The proportions, I think, are better. So if you don't need the pickup truck bed, save yourself a little bit of money. You're probably going to enjoy the Wrangler a little bit more. But for me, I'd go Gladiator.
John?
Wrangler. Couple reasons. I don't really need a bed, nor do I want one. Partly because the added length, partly because I don't want people asking me to help them move.
That's a fair point. You have a truck, people are going to hit you up, help me move.
Right. So that's number one. Number two, if I'm getting a Jeep, I'm probably going to start doing a lot more off-roading. And if I'm going to do that, I want something that I want the better one. You know, I think the shorter wheelbase of the Wrangler just is better suited to you know, hitting some of the trails up north. I think they both look good. I think the Gladiator actually looks really cool. It's different, but I think just for me, I don't want to help people move, and I want better, just that marginally better off-roading capability. I don't want to get, you know, high-sided on a little hill on some sort of crest. But so yeah, Wrangler for me, and yeah, save some money.
There you go. For me, it's the Wrangler. The whole genesis, even for this segment, for me was I was so excited about the Gladiator, like super excited. I've been looking at older Jeeps, like, you know, older Comanches, looking at, I mean, even old Gladiators, Scramblers, and just thinking how cool they are, thinking, should I try to get one? And I'm like, no, the Gladiator is going to come out. This will be like the truck, you know, for me, if I ever do need to buy a daily driver. And then the novelty kind of wore off, and I've been like kind of looking at like just Wranglers rolling around and looking at some of the different things you could do with them, the different packages, the profile. For me, it does kind of come down to the design a little bit. And to be clear, I really like both of them, but I've just really started to like the Wrangler again. I think I would probably fit like, you know, find like the price point that I, you know, felt comfortable with, and then just get as much Wrangler as I could. Yeah. And for me, I've really started to come back around to the Wrangler. I think, and I also like the SUV, like utility. For me, like having some room in back is better than having an actually fairly large bed. I don't need that kind of capability right now. Nobody's asked me to help them move in a while, but you know, that's a fair point with a truck.
Yeah. I'm too old for that, man.
Yeah, really.
I
like throw out your back. But yeah, Wrangler. And frankly, someday I think I'd like to own a Wrangler. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's definitely like something that's been on my list of cars I would love to own one day, and I probably will. Particularly when they come out with a plug-in version.
Yes, go ahead, Jimmy.
I have owned Wranglers.
Which ones have you owned?
Well, you see, I've owned the same one more than one time, believe it or not. I had a 1990 that my dad picked up, and it was basically my car. I started making the payments on it, and it truly became my car. Came home from a work trip once, and Dad had it completely taken apart in the barn, and he said, "Yeah, I'm just doing a little bit of maintenance on it." I get back the next week from another work trip, and it's lifted with huge wheels and tires and a stereo in it. And, you know, that was kind of just like a super cool dad thing to do. My dad was an engineer at Jeep, for anyone who didn't know that. So I gave that car back over to him when I got married, and he drove it for a little while longer. And then I got it back from him again, and absolutely loved that thing. Now, I will say that it was a 4-cylinder. And once it was lifted with those big wheels, it was just as slow as can be, you know, like foot to the floor. You're hoping to keep up with traffic on the expressway, 65 miles an hour. So you don't have that issue with modern Wranglers. And I haven't owned anything like super recent. But I could see myself one day, once the current, what are they, JLs? Once the JL Unlimiteds get into a, you know, reasonable used car price point, then yeah, I could see myself picking up another one.
The Turbo 4 we had in the office maybe 2-3 months ago, I really like that engine with the Wrangler. I was surprised how much I liked it and how, the kind of energy that it gave the Wrangler. I think the Pentastar V6 is, probably the best all-around engine in that segment or in the Wrangler. But I might, if I were buying one, look at the Turbo 4 too, just because it gives the whole, it gives the Wrangler a different feel, and some of the other options like a plug-in. I'm not sure I'd get a diesel Wrangler. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Unless I had longer highway drives, I don't think I'd go down that road. But there's a lot of variety there. Let's put it that way.
Now, you can't get the Turbo 4 with the stick shift. It's automatic only. Yeah, so
it's auto only.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to save, $2,000 option for the automatic over the manual. So I'm going to save that money, get the manual, keep the Pentastar, and put that $2,000 into rock rails or something.
It's a good point.
It's a good point.
Or into more gas.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. All right, let's move along. Wow, I totally went down the rabbit hole. I'm already specking out a Wrangler, and there's more versions that I realized. I think I would actually look at getting a Willys spec.
Yeah, that's
that
cool.
Comes in. It starts at $37,490. Comes in just a bone stock Willys. You get a lot of cool stuff actually. Yeah, I think I might do that. Yeah, I don't know. The gray looks good. The first time I did the Rubicon, I did it in a 4-door green Wrangler for the refresh in 2012, somewhere in there. So I've always been partial to green Wranglers too. The whole military Jeep vibe.
I had a green Cherokee back in the day. So
nice.
I think green is a good Jeep color.
Do they have a deep green yet, or is it just that super bright grass green still?
So I'm only seeing the grass green. I'm literally looking at the colors.
That's too green. That's too green for me.
It's pretty green. The last generation did have almost an army green, which looked really cool. That and that sandstone, whatever they called it. That was awesome. All right, people don't need to hear us talk about Wrangler colors, but that's one of the fun things of working for a car website is you're hey, let's spec out some cars and hey, why don't we make this a post? Okay. So anyways, all right. Another this or that. I think a lot of people cross shop these, the Subaru Forester or the Subaru Outback. Why don't we start with you this time, John?
Outback. The new Outback is really nice. It feels more premium than before. I like that infotainment system, the vertically aligned, and it just drives really nice. The steering on it is very good. It feels very comfortable on soft roads. It feels really at home on soft roads, and it's just a little more space for me. Yeah, it's more money, but I would want to live with that a lot longer than I would with a Forester. I would definitely keep an Outback, maybe till it dies. but yeah, I would go with Outback. The Forester also, you can't get the turbo in the Forester. You can in the Outback. So depending on where you live, that's going to be important, especially if you live in the mountains or something. You're going to want that turbocharger. So yeah, Outback.
Outback. I will second that. I'd also go with the Outback. I do we have our long-term Forester, which I'm actually taking to the UP this weekend. It's a strong vehicle. I've always liked the Forester, but to me, the Outback is its own special breed. Mm-hmm. Forester's good, but I think if I were going to go down that road, I'd cross shop it with a few other things. I don't know, maybe a 4Runner or a Wrangler. If I really wanted that SUV body style, I think the Forester is very good. I think this new iteration of it is one of the best, probably the best Forester ever. It's the cliche, it's the newest, but they really have gotten it right, I think. But I would still go Outback. I like the wagon body style. I like the sort of lightly lifted body style. I think it's the one of the few vehicles that actually looks good, having a little bit of plastic, off-road cladding on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally. Outback. Jeremy.
Outback. I mean, I'd love to be the contrarian here, but you got sidetracked speccing Wranglers, I'm now sidetracked speccing Outbacks. I've got a really nice Outback spec right now with cinnamon brown pearl paint.
Oh, yeah, I love that brown.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get that, but I like it as a press car color.
Oh, I would 100% get the brown.
Oh, I would totally get the brown. Yeah. I
All right,
like
I'll be
this.
the voice of dissent here then.
I like the autumn green metallic too. That's a pretty cool color.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, but no, I'm going cinnamon brown, and I'm getting the turbocharged engine. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good, solid car. I don't think anyone who's buying an Outback or a Forester is going to be disappointed with whichever one they choose. But yeah, the Outback is just a lower center of gravity, sportier with the turbocharged engine. I think that's definitely the way to go.
And they're both vastly improved over the previous generation with that new platform. They just drive better. They feel solid. And they're both, I'm surprised with how spacious that Forester is. They made it bigger on the inside without making it much bigger on the outside. But still, the Outback is just, I don't know. I've always, when I was first about to get my license, I for some reason was fixated on the Outback, and I've never gone back.
I think it's interesting too how, like, to your point, John, the new platform has really given both these vehicles new energy.
Mm-hmm.
They do ride much better. And I think the interiors are better too. Subaru is finally reaching this, they're achieving this sort of efficacy where you're seeing very nice premium feeling interiors with nice materials, thoughtful shapes, good infotainment systems, where, that to me is what's really going to help move Subaru forward. They're not going to be this sort of niche Pacific Northwest brand or New England brand. More people start driving these things, they're going to be like, this is great. This is really, really solid. So I think, Subaru has a path. I'm not sure they ever really need to be truly mainstream like Honda or Toyota or Chevy.
No.
But the products are getting there to the point where you don't have to be the stereotypical Subaru, granola person who has a golden retriever, although I guess I have both of those, to enjoy this car anymore. So I think they've really grown up. They're really good.
Agreed.
Did you know that Subaru offers a vertically mounted CD player in the center console?
No.
I had no idea that was even a thing.
No, I'm going through the options package, and literally, you pop open the center console, at the very front of it, mounted vertically, so the CD slot facing upward is an optional CD player.
Interesting.
Yeah, who knew?
I think I would consider getting that, actually. I still have a lot of CDs.
I finally got rid of a bunch of them.
Anyways,
I got rid of CDs when I got rid of my WRX, which had a 6-disc changer in it. And once I didn't have that anymore, that was my only CD player. And now that I don't have that anymore, I don't have a CD player for the CDs.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeremy.
My Lexus LX or a GX has a CD player in it that has never had a CD in it since I've owned it. So I think I can probably skip that option if I'm speccing an Outback.
I will say this. I actually, in hindsight, listening to like Spotify or where you can also get the Autoblog podcast, mind you, or Amazon Music or wherever you get your music, to me is so much better than CDs. Because I used to love to get a CD, and I was a big, I'll say, Counting Crows fan. It's probably not surprising to you guys, but yeah, I mean, I like Counting Crows, 90s band, and most songs on those CDs were good, but there'd be a couple clunkers that maybe on a long road trip you'd get into. You could skip it, you could fast forward, you could try to get into them if you're really into the band. But now you don't even have to. You don't have to listen to the deep cuts if you don't want to. You can play the hits.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Play the hits. Don't stop believing. Let's move on to Mustang versus Camaro versus Challenger. So this is really like a this or that or this. So whatever, we'll make the rules up ourselves.
This, that, or the other thing.
There you go. There you go. How about we start off with you, Jeremy? This is kind of your idea. Choose wisely, sir.
I'm actually going to choose completely unwisely. and I'm going to go Challenger.
I knew he was going to go that way.
I knew he would too. I absolutely knew.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fun car. Like, I am not going to be one of those guys who buys a Camaro, a Mustang, or a Challenger and shows up at the road racetrack. Mid Ohio actually is super close to me. I'm not going to do that. If I did, then I'd buy a Mustang or a Camaro. The high-end Camaros are stellar track cars. The Shelby Mustangs are really, really good on a track. Also, I'm not going to do that, but I very well may show up at a drag strip. I've done that many times. Kind of grew up in a muscle car household, and the Challenger is a muscle car. The Camaro and the Mustang have morphed into sports cars. Mm-hmm. And the Challenger just appeals to me more. I really like the aesthetic. I would get the 6.4 liter, the big 392 V8. That's how I'd spec mine. I no qualms about picking the Challenger.
Interesting.
John?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I have had more fun driving the Challenger in my lifetime. I've been able to drive the Demon, Hellcat Red Eye. I've driven at some pretty amazing tracks. But spending my own money, I'm not gonna buy a Hellcat. I'm not gonna spend that much money. I'm gonna get a Mustang. I would get the V8. I would get a Mustang GT, but I wouldn't get much else in it. That V8 is just so nice, just so smooth and sonorous, and you can't find a flat spot in the entire rev range. I really like the looks of it. I like. I'm not totally sold on that 10-speed automatic, but don't have to get that. And the Camaro doesn't really do it for me. It never really has. The Challenger's really cool, but I would want something on the crazier end if I were going to get a Challenger. I think a sort of down to basics Mustang would be how I would spend my money.
So I'm going to hedge here a little bit. I would say if I was going to have it for 6 months, I'd get the Mustang. If I were going to actually drive it, I would get the Challenger. For years and own, just because I feel like a Challenger, I prefer the muscle coupe sort of feel. I really like how the Challenger drives. I've had a ton of fun in Challengers, on racetracks. I did the Woodward Dream Cruise and the Hellcat, literally when it was just launching. And they're big cars, but they're easy to drive, Yeah. I mean, I'd get the 392 motor and all day. I mean, I guess I got to make a call here. I'm going to say Challenger 392. That's what I would do. It's close. I mean, I want to say Mustang, but I also think of how driving a Mustang can be a lot of work sometimes. I remember literally spinning out on a cool morning in California, just making a right turn on an intersection, I think I was following one of our video producers in a Camaro, and I'm like, whoa, I just spun out here, but nobody else is here. It's 6 a.m. No harm, no foul. Probably some user error involved, but so it goes. And then I'd put the Camaro third right now. And this is just totally us talking, we're not drinking beers, but this is barstool conversation here, how we're feeling at this moment. To me, the Camaro is awesome. It's amazing on the track. It's a very technical car. And there's parts of it that I don't think I'd want to live with, even though, metrically, I would probably say the Camaro is the best of these three by a hair, maybe. The Mustang is right up there too. And then the Challenger, rationally falls short in a lot of different ways. But on the other hand, it's a big, fun car that's got a lot of power and looks really good. Yeah. So that's all parts of my brain speaking there. Cool. Let's wrap this up with kind of a nebulous one. Vintage car or new car? And we'll put some parameters here.
Okay.
You're going to spend let's just say $20,000, $25,000, and you're looking for something that you could drive and you will still be spending some time in it. And the vintage car, could fall into that category. It also might not. Or, you spend that money on like just to go out and get a new car. So, theoretically, here's what you could do. You could get basically an entry-level Mustang for 25 grand, roughly. Enjoy having a Mustang. That's cool. Or reach into the, the dustbin of history and get like an older Mustang. Mustangs aren't cheap, but let's just say you could maybe get one that's got some miles on it. Maybe not a truly classic one, or you get like maybe a non-classic Chevelle or, an older Land Cruiser. Like, which would you rather do? And we'll preface this by saying, maybe it's not your 100% daily driver, but you do got to drive this thing. This isn't like a museum car. So Jeremy, this is kind of your submission here. So kick us off.
Okay, so I'm going to preface by saying this, that when I was presented with this choice to get a car for myself, I chose vintage. I have a 1975 Volkswagen camper van, and my wife drives a Lexus GX. I don't have any other car. Like literally when I have to get someplace, I've got this 75 VW van. It is so compromised in so many ways. It's slower than all get out. I mean, just like, I used to joke that the Wrangler was slow. No, this VW van is super slow. But I mean, I don't regret it. Like, it's a super, super fun thing. It's a conversation starter. Like I take it places and people just like stop me and ask me about it all the time. It's a really cool vehicle, and one benefit to, I mean, and I'll get to drawbacks. There's tons of drawbacks, but one cool thing about a vintage car is it's likely not depreciating. It's either already done depreciating and just solid, or it might even be slightly appreciating, as you own it. If you own it 5-10 years, you might actually make money on the thing if you don't, damage it or mess it up somehow. So downsides, stupid little things break all the time. Like I've been stranded in my 75 Volkswagen camper van before, whereas if I had bought a brand new $25,000 Civic, that never would have happened. But yeah, like I would definitely say you've got to be committed, and you have to be what you'd consider like an enthusiast to the point of making irrational choices to go vintage. But there's a lot of rewards to it. So I wouldn't tell other people to do it, but I also wouldn't dissuade them from doing it.
And would you do that? Like, I threw out that like totally like subjective price point, but I mean, would you use that strategy for all price points? Like whether it was 40, 50, I mean, would you keep that the same way, Jeremy?
No, definitely not. I would say like, you threw out a $25,000 price. And I think if I'm talking daily driver, I wouldn't go higher than that on something vintage. I don't even think I would go quite that high. I think more $15,000, $20,000 for something vintage, like a daily driver, makes a lot of sense. I was perusing eBay the other day and I came across some really nice late 80s, 1990 Jeep Grand Wagoneers. And I thought, man,
that's cool.
Wouldn't I rather drive that thing around every day than, just an anonymous $20,000 brand new crossover? There'd be a lot of compromises, but yeah, I would enjoy my life more.
Okay. I'm going to raise it to we'll say 40. Does that change your answer at all?
Yeah, I don't think I would buy a vintage car as a daily driver at that price range.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. John, you're up.
I agree with Jeremy. At those higher prices, I would not, but at like 25 grand right now in my life, I think I'm going to buy like a first generation Oldsmobile Tornado. I've always wanted one.
Ooh.
I inherited a 67 Olds 442 convertible
awesome
that I had for
Love
a while.
The 442.
At that time in my life, I was not ready to, really work on it. And if I were picking something out myself, I wouldn't have gotten a convertible. But yeah, I've always wanted an Olds Tornado. It's a unique car. there's some family history there. My grandfather was chief engineer for that project. And yeah, that's what I would do.
I think that's a solid choice. I love those Tornados.
Yeah, I've always wanted one. I love the idea of owning an Orphan. If I weren't gonna get an Oldsmobile, I'd probably look at some other brand that is no longer sold here. Just because it's fun. There's a badge of honor to be an owner of an Orphan, and there's a really cool Orphans car show in Ypsilanti. I was able to actually be a judge for that this year, and it just made me really made me miss my Oldsmobile and made me want a new one. And yeah, so I think that's what I would do.
That's such a great car show too.
It might be a stupid decision, and it might be one I would regret, but I
mean, what's to regret? Like, if you regret it, you can sell it, right?
Yeah, good point. I mean,
that is,
that's true. That's true.
Even if you were to lose a little bit of money on it, if you owned it for, let's say, 3 years, you'd be making, if you bought new, you'd be making a car payment, right? So you'd take a huge depreciation hit, and you'd be making those payments. You'd not lose as much money in 3 years buying a vintage Tornado if you resold it.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
I think you're talking John into an interesting decision.
I've actually talked to my wife a little bit about it recently, and it might be something we do. Maybe when Wally's like a little bit older, my son, who's 4, and he's really into cars, and I think he would love to learn to work on them eventually, and it'd be a fun father-son project to keep this thing maintained and take it out for drives, and maybe it would be his car someday, maybe his first car. I don't know.
It's pretty awesome. I've gone back and forth, sort of on my own criteria here too. At first I was like, well, I think I'd go new, because there's a lot of new vehicles right now, like a Wrangler, like I just said, that I would love to drive and be fired up to drive. But to get the Wrangler I want is going to be at least 40, 45 probably. And to stick to, the price point of 25, I definitely go classic. There's a lot of classics that are actually considerably under that I would look at. Like I've always wanted like an early to mid 80s Cutlass. I've loved that body style.
You're speaking my language, man.
Sweet looking car. And that's not the classic one. That's like one I'd like to drive for a bit.
Cool, though.
It's sweet. Maybe get an XJ. Those are sweet. Well below 25. You could get 3 of those if you're willing to take some miles. I would probably land on like something that would actually cost about 25 grand. I'd look at like an early 60s Chevy Impala. I like that, like sort of, I wouldn't call it necessarily jet age styling, but it's like you're after the 50s where like the fins aren't really this crazy huge thing anymore. It's more buttoned up. It's not aerodynamic. It's just this big rectangle coming right at you. But it's like sort of previewing the muscle car era.
Yeah.
So I'd look at one of those early 60s Impala.
I like that. I like that quite a bit. It's cool. I mean, like, there's just so many cars out there that are just so special, that are pieces of history. And it's really exciting. It's really easy to get excited about them and to love them, especially when there are fewer of them now. It's in some ways it's hard to justify spending that type of money on something so old that needs maintenance and care and constant attention, but it's an easier thing emotionally to do, because it's just so special.
Should we spend some other people's money?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Let's see. Let's wrap some things up here. We do have an update. Jeff from episode 590 writes in to let us know that he bought a Wrangler. That's cool.
Yeah, he was looking at getting a new Wrangler, or maybe keeping his Accord daily driver for a few more years, maybe buying a Honda Clarity at some point, just to save money, and then put the Wrangler off for a later date. But he went through with it and got a 2020 Wrangler, Sahara,
It's a sweet looking Wrangler you got.
Oh, it's beautiful. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, blue with saddle brown seats, he says. And yeah, the photo's lovely. So good job.
Saddle brown seats that's a strong option. As I have spent probably a third of this podcast looking at different Wrangler options, but yeah. So all right, let's go to a new question here. Wants to start off by saying that he loves the pod. Well, thank you for listening. One of the highlights of his week while driving to work. Well, that's good. Consists of long driving hours, 8 to 12 hours a day. That's a lot of driving. Mm-hmm. Several locations a day. Could put anywhere from 80 to 250,000 miles, 80 to 250 miles on his car a day. Some of it stop and go. Currently drives a company van in line for a promotion that will include an allowance for a new vehicle of his choice. That's kind of a nice promotion right there.
Cool.
Target is under $25,000. Well, we just kind of discussed that. So 62 Impala, maybe? Yeah, needs fuel efficiency. Okay, there goes all of the suggestions that we just laid out. Comfort and a quiet ride. Needs to be able to take calls to deal with clients. I'd like all-wheel drive, but it's not a must. Current top picks, the Mazda 3, the Nissan Rogue. I literally just drove one in here 3 hours ago. I'll tell you what I think about that, or the Kia Forte. Gentleman is 6'2", 280, needs something that is big enough so as not to be cramped, would also like something a little bit sportier. He currently owns a 2014 Mustang GT with a track pack. Nice car. Here's the kicker. After the vehicle is paid off, I will personally own the vehicle. This is an interesting promotion. Pick your car, get an allowance, and you own it. So any fun oddball choices are, of course, welcome. All right, so he's given us a few to work with, plenty of criteria. I would say this, all three of these are a little on the small size for somebody, who's, 6'2", 280, but also all three are totally doable. Yep. So, John, let's give us some options here.
So, I was thinking about it, and there's one that all three of us have recently driven that sort of fits a lot of these things he wants. It's if you can do 27 grand instead of 25, I'd maybe get a turbocharged Kia Soul. Pretty roomy inside, pretty sporty, kind of funky, oddball car, comfortable, lots of content, quiet, comfortable. It checks a lot of those boxes, and it won our compact crossover contest. I think that would be maybe a good one.
That's a strong option. I think it's interesting. Couple things we don't know is he going to keep the Mustang? Because that would change my sort of fun equivalent quota. He doesn't say he's going to sell it, so we'll just assume he's going to keep it. By the way, the writer is Alex. I should have said that from the start. Not Alex Kirstein or Malberg, but a gentleman named Alex.
No affiliation.
No affiliation to Autoblog. Jeremy, what do you think?
Okay, so this is a tough price point. $25,000 that's a full $10,000 less than the average new car sold in America right now. So putting that into perspective, your options are a little bit limited. It's one of those price points where if you can shop for something low mileage pre-owned, even certified pre-owned, that's a strong choice. You can get a bigger car, a little bit nicer car for $25,000. That wasn't listed in the criteria though. So I'm going to stick with new. He mentioned the Mazda 3, and the Mazda 3 is just a stellar car. It's so good to drive. He mentioned all-wheel drive would be nice. You can get an all-wheel drive Mazda 3. Even a Mazda 3, which is a relatively small car, especially it's very cramped in the back seat. That doesn't sound like a super important criteria to Alex. He's 6'2", 280. Front seat space, I didn't have any problems. I'm also 6'2", a little bit smaller framed, but I don't think you'd have a problem sitting in the front seat of the Mazda 3. Great option. I jotted down a few other possibilities. I should mention that a Mazda 3 with all-wheel drive and especially with the hatch is a little over 25. You'd have to try to get a little bit creative with your dealer to get the right Mazda 3 at the right price. You might be looking more like 27, 28. But great choice. The Civic Si falls into that price range. The Jetta GLI falls into that price range. I think the Golf All-Track might be just a little bit over that, but that's also a nice car. There's some good options that fall right into $25,000, but that's where they start. So you're not going to be adding any options onto there. It's going to be tough. But of the three you chose, the Mazda 3 is the way that I would go.
I will second that. Of these three, I like the 3 the best as well. I think it's the most fun to drive. I think it's a gorgeous car. I think Mazda's interiors look really good these days. I just drove the Rogan. I actually took it to lunch to let my dog out. Didn't like the steering. It's pretty light. But it does get you into like crossover territory. So if you're looking for a little bit more space, I'd say that's more like all right, compromise vehicle isn't the right term, but I mean, I would say it's
super practical.
It's practical. It's bigger.
There's a reason that they just sell a ton of them.
They sell a ton of them. Yeah. It's a perfectly nice vehicle. Mazda 3 has a little bit more, charm. Yeah. The Forte, I'm not sure I'd really, I can't tell you the last time I drove a Forte. It doesn't really resonate with me. And yeah, it's a second what Jeremy said too. If you have, if you're willing to sort of recalibrate and look at like a lightly used something, maybe in the CPO space for $25,000, you could get a lot of car. You open yourself up to some different, things that maybe are like 3-4 years old, somewhere in that range. You can maybe move up a segment. The other thing though is maybe you don't want to do that. So there is some information we don't quite have here, but if you are looking for something, that's lightly used, suddenly you could look at like a Grand Cherokee, you could look at, different kinds of SUVs, a Chevy Impala, different, all sorts of things.
You're talking about a new one, not a 1960s Impala.
Yeah. I don't know why the Impala stuck into my head throughout this podcast. That's probably, yeah. So there's a couple of different ways you could go. But from the choices here, I think, I would say if you love the Mazda 3, that's obviously a car you're going to enjoy. You might want to try the Rogue though, just to maybe you'll get in there, maybe you'll say, there's a lot of room in here. This is, it does give you that crossover vibe, and maybe you decide that's the way to go too. I don't think there's, a really wrong answer between those two.
Yeah, I think of those three, the Mazda 3 would be my choice. Yeah. But take a look at the Soul, even if you don't get the turbocharged one. It's still a pretty cool car, and you get a lot of content for the price.
I like the Soul more than the Forte. Yeah, for sure. But any other thoughts on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was just looking at some certified pre-owned options. I'm not sure where things like Outbacks with the 4-cylinder fall, but then I was countering that with, but I really like the new Outback a lot more. So yeah, I'm just going to stick with my Mazda 3 recommendation and say that that's a really great car. I would drive the Civic Si also, and probably the Jetta GLI. They're all going to fall into a similar price, right? It's going to be just over that $25,000 budget. But drive all three of them, see if one of them really stands out to you, and see if you can work with the dealer on the price a little bit in any of those three.
Sounds like a good place to leave it. Great show, guys. Really enjoyed this one. We went long, but that's okay. It's getting dark out. The sun's about to set here in Michigan, if it ever came up. Please send us your Spend My Monies. Sean, Joe, Jonathan, we've got your messages in queue. We're going to try to get to them. Maybe we'll even do a couple of these, in one show, just to knock them out. That's podcast@autoblog.com. Send them to us. That comes to all of us. We love to do these, so send them our way, and we will be happy to spend your money. If you're so inclined, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, as it's currently known, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be safe out there. Enjoy the snow if you have it outside your window, and we will see you next week.